Well, good evening, and welcome to the third edition of uh, the MnemoConnect. Um, MnemoConnect is one of the 5 live video series from the Mnemo channel, from Consecutivos. MnemoConnect consists of these 5 channels that we transmit live every Wednesday, always 7:30 p.m. Brasilia time zone. And the Mnemo channel is composed by Mnemo Bio, Mnemo Book, Mnemo Cast, Mnemo Science, and Mnemo channel. On MnemoConnect, sorry. On MnemoConnect, we discuss conscientiologic subjects, especially those most related to seriexology, through debates and interviews. Tonight, we are going to discuss about the broken line of seriexology. And the one definition of that, there is an entry on the Encyclopedia of Conscientiology, and the definition is, the broken line of seriexology is the path of consciousness along the multi-existential seriality, invariability, inconstant resulting from the diversified factors such as somatic, mesological, companionship, attributions, societies, demands, lucidity, and zeitgeist, distinct in each new existential cycle in relation to the variance of conduct and evolutionary balance of consciousness of the life that constitute the holobiography. And to debate with us tonight, we're having 3 guests that I will introduce after the opening. Stay with us. Our first guest is Australian. She moved to Iguaçu Falls in Brazil in 2014. She's an English teacher with a background in urban design. Found out about conscientiology at the end of 2006 and became an instructor in 2009. She's a volunteer of Consecutivos and pre-consciocentric institution ISIC, and she has been a Penta practitioner since 2016. Welcome, Jaclyn Cowen. Hi, Jaclyn. How are you?
Hi, João. I'm good, thanks. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you with us. And our next guest was born in Brazil, but she lives in Australia. She's graduated in psychology, specialist in positive psychology, master degree student in psychogerontology, specialization in emotional intelligence and humanization and health. She's a volunteer of conscientiology since 1991. It's a long time. Teacher of conscientiology since 1994 and Penta practitioner since 1995. She lived in 5 different countries teaching conscientiology and currently is a volunteer of ISIC. Welcome, Ana Paula Lage.
Hello, João Paulo.
Hi, Ana Paula.
Good evening. How are you? Nice to be here. Thank you.
Very good. Nice to have you too. And the third guy, it's a guy actually now. It's an IT analyst, researcher of medical informatics, first course attended in conscientiology in 1999, volunteer since October 2000, and currently volunteer and teach at Consecutivos. Come in, we have Takaki.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice
Hi,
to be here.
Hi, Weber.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right. So to begin with, there's a question. So I would like to know how you guys can elaborate this theory of the broken line of conscientiology, or Seriexis, I'm sorry. So how you elaborate that, how you understand this theory? It's free to begin, whoever wants.
So I guess I'll mention something first. Yeah, so how I understand this, this idea is that the consciousness can experience lives in either the positive broken line of Seriexis, something where, you know, the circumstances that they're born into are positive and optimized, favorable, or the negative broken line of Seriexis, where it's kind of they're more limited in their circumstances of life. And ultimately, it has as its objective the evolution of the consciousness. So whether the circumstances are more hindering or more optimizing for the consciousness, it's always with that objective in mind.
Yeah, go in line with what Jaclyn said. It is, from what I understood, it's an instrument that we can, a technique that we can apply in our multi-existentiality and in our existential program, that we evaluate some variables and we're going to evaluate the companions, the people that we need to be with, the activities we need to do, the weak traits or strong traits we need to manifest plus or more or less, and then we generate these broken lines. As Jaclyn said, it's positive or negative, but in a sense, it is ultimately for evolutionary gain that the consciousness is gonna have, no? And so the more we evolve and the more variables we have in our existential lives, we need to take into account those situations where we need to accommodate, and in order to have more productivity in our existential program.
Yeah, I would also like to, add some things. My opinions, share with you my opinions. I think that we usually think of the evolutionary process as a straight line, but our daily life isn't a straight line. So whether it's sort of programmed or very well thought in advance, to have certain break in our line of evolution, or if it's somehow an accident or something unpredicted, we can have these situations in our evolutionary process that actually, kind of make us an important shift or important or a strong shift or a strong, cut in our, main, path in our evolutionary process. That actually we have to accommodate this broken line somehow, and again, whether if it was positive or negative, it will help, and somehow it is important in our evolutionary process. So I think that something that we usually think of is that our evolutionary process is a straight line, and it isn't. Something that we have to, think that we can somehow have these broken lines in our evolution.
All right. There's a particular thing in this broken line, which is can be break upwards and downwards, and you guys are talking about negative and positive. Can you distinguish one negative and positive and downwards and upwards? Can an upward line can be negative and downward can be positive? How can these work?
Yeah, in a...
Go ahead.
Okay, Anna.
No, you can go. Go ahead.
Yeah, in a sense, if we, depending on how we zoom in or zoom out our Seriexis, we can think that if we are in a closed Zoom, think that the broken line can be negative. It can apparently be negative, but if you zoom out and look from a broader perspective, we can find that this broken line was important somehow in our evolutionary process. But thinking, as the concept of a broken line in the Seriexis means, I think that it's just how can I say, a manifestation, an expression of the consciousness that is a little bit off the main or the average manifestation of ourselves in terms of intraphysical life, and whether if it's positively or if we are accelerating our evolutionary process in that life, or if we are sort of slowing down our evolutionary process. I think that's the idea of being positive or negative or upwards or downwards. If you consider the average, our average manifestation, we can be can walk faster or slower, and this faster or slower, or some sort of being a little bit away or astray from our main or our average manifestation, that means that it can be very likely a broken line in our Seriexis.
Yeah, like one example that I could think of, a person has some strong traits, but they were born in a family where, due to the mesology, the zeitgeist, there is a restriction in some of those traits. They won't manifest in the higher potential, but it's a broken line because it's downwards, because actually that consciousness has a potential to manifest more, but due to the evolutionary gain or the necessity of the existential program, that person reborn in that condition because of the group, because of the environment. So they are kind of mimic, they will have to mingle in that group. So in this sense, it's going to be downwards because their performance it's lower, but now will be upwards, but their gain, evolutionary gain, will be higher. It's more or less like one example I could think of in terms of upwards.
Yeah, how I understand it, and I guess presenting an example, I guess, can help to illustrate my understanding of this process. For example, a person who, in a previous life, they were born into a financially comfortable existence. Their family had money, but perhaps maybe they kind of abused their financial situation. They were very much focused on the status and the symbols, the status symbols and all these things. And they didn't take advantage of their, financial situation to live a life that's according maybe to their proexis. And so then, for example, in the next life, they enter into a situation where they don't have that financial support anymore. And they miss that. They miss, having that money. But so that's kind of like a downward broken line. So they had it before and now they don't. And so that kind of, and so it would be like a negative broken line of Seriexis, right? Well, in terms of that situation, because it's a huge focus in their life. For them, it's something that, how could I say, affects their manifestation, right?
All right. So you're saying that the broken line, it's not about a well succeed when you are in a broken downwards. It is about what the consciousness do with the resources they have. Is that right?
That's it. Yes. Because actually the consciousness can come back in a certain condition, but can be downwards, but the consciousness will depend on that decision. They will not revert, but they have a gain, evolutionary gain with that. It will depend the lucidity that the consciousness has. And so if how conscious, how lucid that consciousness is about that process, because the conscious might have the condition to revert the situation they are downwards, but they are not lucid, and they end up repeating the same problem. As Jaclyn said, okay, they do not have the money, but money might not the main thing that they need. Maybe that condition will give to that consciousness instrument for them to develop or to manifest other traits, which will facilitate them to go upwards and having a gain with that broken line. I think the broken line, personally, I didn't see as something that is a punishment in a sense. It is an opportunity for the consciousness to exercise skills that they need to, in order to develop one, they go down one, and then they start to balance those manifestations. That's why I thought it was an instrument used in the existential program. For me, when I've read the first time, I was surprised, and I thought, wow, I never thought about that, because I thought about the spiral, but not in this spiral broken like that, So yeah, when we start to think like this, yes, it's, even though looks negative a situation or limit situation, it can be an opportunity for the consciousness to manifest other traits and come out from that position or that situation.
That's the thing. The situation is there, but it really depends on the consciousness themselves. If they're going to take advantage, even in those limitations, right?
Yes.
What they do with their life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a metaphor that can, somehow symbolize this idea is to take one step back, to take two steps forward, right? So sometimes if we try to keep on pushing and trying to make a step forward, it's somehow difficult, or somehow it's limited by something, and we have to go one step back, arrange things, organize things, and then we can move forward with less burden and more freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And do you think that when we are in a upwards broken line, it's at more, how can I say that, it's more favorable to reach the complexes, or not? Or there's no relation? Tricky one, right?
Tricky question, yeah.
It's a tricky question, yeah.
I think ultimately, yes. I think ultimately, if you are in a more, and it depends, of course, on the consciousness, and optimized in what sense, right?
Yes,
optimized. You need to think about the variables, and you need to think about the conscious themselves and their temperament and their, manifestation, if that is the best for that consciousness in that life. But ultimately, I think that if the consciousness is given a more, is born into circumstances which are more favorable, which means that, for example, they're born into a family which is less conflictive, have good genetics, and, and so then they're able to they're not focused so much on resolving those like immediate ego karmic, group karmic problems, and focusing on, their existential program or things that they need to do.
I would think that would depend on the circumstance and variables, like Jaclyn said. It's not because it's upwards and that is guaranteed. As for all of us, our existential program is not guaranteed that we are going to execute and be completists. It depends on the decisions we make, and if we think, okay, if the person is lucid about it and they keep their compass focus in the existential program, yes. But if the conscious is in all these easy life, we could say, and they think I do not need too much, make lots of effort in the life I'm having, so it's all easy, I gained, and it's gonna depend. But how the consciousness is gonna drive that opportunity, they go through that opportunity. But in another hand, we could think that someone that has a broken line downwards and they are lucid, they might know that they need to speed up. They might know that they need to work harder in order to get the completism, and maybe that gives them the fuel to do that. So it depends. But if we think it's if they receive it's positive and so on, they could be completists. It would be easier. I would think throughout our evolution, are we going to have more broken lines in our existential programs that are more upwards? We tend to have upwards, or less downwards and more upwards. That's what I would ask, no? But I think it depends on the consciousness and what they're gonna do with the opportunity they have.
The opportunity. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. How are we gonna deal with the favorable situation or the more difficult situation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And we have one question from Diane, and I think she's asking about if we have how can we study a broken line in one life? I mean, I think she's saying that if how can we study that in this life? How can we study the previous breaks? How can you do that
in one life?
In one life.
Yeah, I would think that, like when I started to study that, I thought that's the question I did. How would I evaluate a broken line in my life today? And I think one of the things it's the movement the consciousness has, not only physical, but professional, the groups that the consciousness tend to reconnect with. And also it starts from the family, the traits that the consciousness manifests, but how they feel restricted or not in some of the traits, and then the abilities that the consciousness will start to use or regain due to the connection or not connection with groups and so on. I would go through this, the movement the consciousness has, not physical only, but the connections they established, and also their traits, the traits that they see due to the connection they develop more or less, some of the traits, the contacts they will have in their existences, I think. Because one of the things we say you said in the definition, it has relation with companions, zeitgeist, the cultures, and so it's all in one existence. You go having those manifestation existential program as a result of those necessity of those connections.
Yeah, I think that it's still a challenge for us to understand and to study, the broken line, because, to think of our evolutionary process is like a deciphering process, a decoding process, and we can only decode and decipher when we do cryptanalysis, for instance. We search for patterns, and the broken line is something that is away from the pattern. So it's somehow it's not in the pattern, so it's off the pattern. So that's the trick, the tricky thing about to study the broken line. But again, our evolutionary process evolves in cycles, and I believe, and I do mean I believe, because I don't have any, more, objective information to share with you. But I believe that even the broken lines, there must be some sort of pattern. We just need to maybe zoom out a little bit further to try to see the Seriexis in a more, broad way, and somehow see the connections that we have in these broken lines in our Seriexis. But in terms of, thinking practically, I usually think of cycles inside cycles. When we study physics, when we study the cycle process, when we have a main frequency, we also have smaller and larger cycles, or waves, or frequencies that are related to the main frequency. So I think that the evolutionary process is made of cycles, the personal multi-existential cycles, and in some way, this present life, one single life, human life, I think that it has some correlations with our evolutionary process, our multiple lives. So if you think of multiple cycles, there is some resemblance between, our multiple cycles and one single, cycle, one single human life. And if we think that in some situations, some periods of time in our life, we have some, sort of broken lines in our own existence, in our physical existence, maybe these broken lines in our manifestation in this life can have some connection with possible broken lines in our Seriexis. But it's just something that I'm thinking, out loud. We still have, all this topic to be developed, and we are here just to, actually discuss this thing and share some ideas on the topic.
So I'd just like to add a comment here. From my understanding, I guess we have lots of tools in our life, the tools from conscientiology. I think that we can apply as well to help us to understand, this broken line of Seriexis. I think that, of course, this is something that probably is possible to research deeper and create like a methodology just for understanding more deeply this, how, we can understand this in our own lives. But, just some things that I thought of, in terms of developing our parapsychism and retrocognitions, in terms of knowing about our past lives. I think that can help us to, do this comparison, see where we were before to where we are now, to give some kind of understanding. Of course, this is, an ongoing process over the life of the person. And to analyze more deeply, what you've received or haven't received in this life, right? Of course, it's always going to be, to some extent, a little, not superficial, but, but of course, you can start and research more deeply over time. So, yeah, and this aspect of self-research, I think, is very important in terms of, understanding our circumstances, getting more lucid about our current situation.
One of the things that when we talked about this the first time, that I thought it was the broken line. If we look at the broken line, thinking about the intraphysical logic of life, I thought it would be difficult to understand. We need to understand the extraphysical logic of our lives. I remember that movie, Field of the Dream. No? Dream of the
Field of Dream.
Field of
Dreams.
the Dream. Yes, Field of the Dreams. That has a time, that has a cycle, it passes a cycle, and there is a time that there is a multidimensional connection for the things to happen. And so there is an extraphysical logic. I think when I read about this subject, I thought, yes, I need to think in terms of what is the extraphysical logic that apply in the person's life or my life. And there I can understand where that broken line will come into place, and why and when, and what are the variables involved into that. So
you guys brought two very important things. One of them is retrocognition. I think it's one of the most important tools to help us understand. If you remember things in the past, and can we maybe distinguish the previous downwards and upwards, and how we did the past with that. And another thing, it's understand where and how actually, how is the line now? Am I in a upwards or downwards broken line? How you guys think we can do that? We can understand and check if we are up or down. How can we see this now?
Yeah, I think we do need to analyze all those different variables, all the variables that you mentioned, the genetics and the mesology and the zeitgeist, all these aspects, and see how we are situated with all those variables. For example, how well adapted are we to our genetics? If we're not so well adapted, if we don't feel, and maybe we, we had many lives in a different gender, and now we've come, in a different gender, a new gender, and we're not so well adapted. How are we with our own gender? That, that's just the soma. Do we have any physical deficiencies, or how is our family? All these variables we can analyze. So yeah, I think it's possible to know.
I think that if we can identify or verify that we are in a broken line, in the moment of a broken line, it's a first gain, first thing that we actually it's a prize we get, in terms of lucidity. So I think that the first challenge is to to discover if we are in a broken line at this very moment or not. And then the second challenge is to understand if you're in an upwards or downwards. I think that once we conclude that we are in a broken line, I think it's probably easier to understand or to realize that we are in an upwards or downwards broken line. But first challenge is to think or to discover if we are actually in this moment living in a broken line, right? But I agree with Jaclyn. I think the only thing that we have is our rationality and the tools that we have already developed, and somehow our parapsychism and the help of the helpers to understand that.
Yeah.
That we have. I think that Jaclyn gave us important tips on this identification process.
Yeah, I think what Jaclyn says is the self-knowledge, the self-research, and understand, and also the parapsychism. I think the parapsychism can give us a notion where we are, not only adapted to the physical body, to the mesology where we are, to the zeitgeist, but how are we into the intraphysical flow of life, which means we tick the box on the demands the intraphysical has, or are we tick the box in the extraphysical demand, our extraphysical procedence? Are we looking at the life we are having, what driving us in our decisions? Are our main evolutionary needs, or our intraphysical needs, our social demands, our gender demands, our emotional demands, So I think because we are dealing with something that demand from us that that reality, to look at that reality, it's necessary the parapsychism to see where is our compass, our consciential compass. And that's we can probably will identify, am I in a broken line? And from there, we can look at where am I, up or down, But yes, I think what Jaclyn said, and a little bit further than that, is look at me, ourselves. We reborn to this life, and we start to navigate in this intraphysical dimension. We start to study conscientiology. We have out-of-body experience or not, and then what are our choices that we are doing? Which choices are we making? Based on what? What is demanding those choices? And that's when we start to, I think, looking at those broken lines and become more lucid. What is driving our existence?
Yeah, I think that also one of the important variables that we can analyze to identify is our mother Tocin. matrixocene, or of course temperament, all these variables that help us to understand and better situate ourselves in our, evolutionary process. But these variables that are more like stable throughout the lives, I think that they can be one important variable to check and to observe, that can somehow give us an idea that if we are more in a straight line or in the mainstream of our evolutionary path, or if we are in a broken line. If our manifestation today is kind of in line with this mainstream that is related to our matrixocene, our temperament, then if we are well adjusted to it, I think that we are in the mainstream. We are not in a broken line. We are in a mainstream. But if somehow the manifestation of our matrixocene, our motivation, evolutionary motivation, and our temperament is like hard to express, or if it's way too easy to express for me, then I think it's probably one of the things that can can somehow indicate that we are in a broken line.
Yes, I agree with you, Weber. I think it's a good indicator. If we're able to easily manifest our potential as a consciousness, or there is those factors that are inhibiting us to manifest ourselves. And we know intimately, I think, whether we're able to do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are making me thinking about the intensive course, because we are probably in our first one, so we've been prepared for this life. We don't know each one if you are on upward or downward, but we've definitely been prepared for one life, a different life from the others. And I'm thinking about maybe in the next intensive course, the second one, we have been more prepared. Theoretically, we're supposed to be more prepared for the next life. Maybe, don't you think, maybe we have been prepared for a broken line, maybe downwards, further down, or maybe higher than usually are, because we are more prepared. We are more prepared to be more powerful, or to have more limitations.
Resilience. Limitations.
Right?
Limitations.
What do you think?
When we start to think that we are making the concept clearer, João Paulo comes with an even trickier question. But
I'm evil today. I'm a little evil tonight.
Again, João Paulo, it's gonna depend. Again, it depends on the result of this life and the preparation for the next life, because it's gonna depend the performance we're gonna have. In a first intensive course, we are dealing with so many variables, and if we are completists, when we go for the second life, or the second intensive course, we think it's gonna be easier, but at the same time, we're gonna deal with more variables intraphysically, whether we are up or down. Those are directly proportional to the demands of that existence and the groups we're going to have to relate to. It's not that we're going to be more prepared and the thing's going to be easier. I don't think so.
True. You're thinking. I think you're thinking right. Yeah, that's perfect.
So it's it's going to be challenged. But yes, we're going to be prepared, but we're going to be dealing with other variables as well. So probably the path of the third, the fourth, and fifth, and onwards, we might deal a little bit easier. but I wouldn't look so in a bright, positive way. I would think that, yeah, we'll be challenged going upwards and we will be challenged to go downwards, especially because we still navigate with something new for us.
Yes.
You know, having so much power or have a restriction of the traits that we need to find out how we manifest myself in this and deal with all this.
Yeah, I
That's how
think
I see.
it's a proportion with our capacity. But I I also think there's something always a challenge
Yes.
in each life, right?
Yes. Yes.
Always
Yes.
something to push us a little bit higher. Don't you think?
Yes, exactly.
Never easy.
Evolution is, how could I say, it's interesting because it's always ahead of us. It's always, the challenges are always ahead of us. But of course, taking into consideration, you know, where we are, right? They don't want to push us over the cliff, right? But how could I say? The first thing I would like to ask, first of all, you have to evaluate if you're in the positive or negative broken line of Seriexis in this life. That's first of all. If you've gone upwards or downwards in this life, that would be my first, you know, analysis of the situation. And then, of course, afterwards, I mean, I would assume the intermissivist consciousness probably would have a life. This is, you know, a hypothesis, right? That many of us would have a life which was upward, broken line of Seriexis, having a more positive life, just to help us to focus on our proexis, but not necessarily. It depends on the case of the consciousness. But then, yes, in terms of upward or downward in the next life, I mean, there's the aspect of the pre-intermissiology, I guess, the period between lives where the idea is that if we've experienced complexus, we will go back to help those consciousnesses that we left behind when we went to the intermissive course. But again, so that's going to be a challenge for us. And that's, you know, is between lives, but that's kind of like a downward descent, you know. So it's interesting to analyze that. In the next life, who knows? Yeah, it depends. There's so many variables. Like Ana was saying, there's so many variables to think about. But one of the things is, yes, it is our first intermissive course, right? So I think give us a chance to have another upward life.
Wait,
Get ready for the next one. Get ready.
Wait.
Yeah. And how you relate this subject to the broken line with the cosmetical infiltration. You know, sometimes we have a broken line or one proaxis, entire proaxis infiltrated in some, you know, a group, a context, a environment. How can we relate this with broken line? Sometimes we have a very hard existential program, and the other one it's a relief because we're not infiltrated anymore. Must be hard to be infiltrated in the broken line, don't you think?
Well, yeah, I think that the cosmetical infiltration is an example of downwards broken line, because if you think of human life, the period of a human life, it's a restricted life, you know. If it's a cosmetical infiltration, well, what is a cosmetical infiltration? Is for instance, when we, with a higher level of cosmeticity, we infiltrate or get into a group that has a lower level of cosmetics, and we deal, and we, you know, live with those integrants, those members of that group, and we actually work with them and stuff like that. If it's cosmetical, it's because this infiltration has a purpose to maybe help, you know, members of this group to get free, to break free from that interpretation that is related to that anti-cosmetical group, right? Since it's a cosmetical infiltration, it's, you know, in a sense, it's a step back in our cosmoethicity, in our level of cosmoethics. So it is a broken line because it's an apparent regression in our cosmoethicity, and but at the same time, it is an important step to help that group, and it's an important process that we have to. It's probably responsibility of ourselves that we have with that group. It's our group karmic process. So it's just an apparent, step back in our evolutionary process, but it's part of the evolutionary process. It's a necessary step, right? So in the sense, when we get into that group, it somehow get limited in our manifestation because it's an interpretation, right? Since it's an interpretation, our freedom is limited. But it, limited in just this period of life. So it is an example of downwards broken line when we infiltrate in a group with this positive cosmoethical infiltration.
Yeah, when we talk about cosmoethical infiltration, I always think in the cosmoethical threshold of our level. You know what I mean? So we are in the limit, almost in the limit. And Weber said that sometimes an infiltration can be in a downwards broken line. What do you guys think about when we are in a downwards? Always we have more limits, and our cosmoethics, personal cosmoethics, it's a little bit lower or not? There's no relation whatsoever.
When Leveb was talking about this, I thought about because it's part of the extension program. I wouldn't think the cosmoethics will be lesser. It's kind of you enter into there. It's a cosmoethical manifestation, but you're not gonna lose your cosmoethical manifestation. You are actually there to work with that group, but not to go to the level, cosmoetic level of that consciousness. Because one thing I think in terms of cosmoetics, it's a progressive development, and the consciousness will more and more and more develop cosmoethics. And once you get to a point in your cosmoethics, I don't think when you go to a group that it's not that level, you're gonna be like them. You understand? Like I do not think that we would lose the cosmetic. The cosmetic don't decrease. Maybe you don't shine so much. Maybe you do not show your face so much, but your cosmetic is there. It's kind of the same example when the astrophysical quants more evolved. They have to pass more time in the barotrosphere.
Barotrosphere, yes.
Barotrosphere, yeah, the barotrosphere, and they kind of shrink the energies. They become mingled in that environment, but they do not decrease their cosmetic. They know what they are doing there. They have a focus what they are doing there. They only don't look so splendid like they would look in a dimension where they can manifest themselves in a more brighter way or more complete way. That's how I think in terms of cosmoethics.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anna. And I think in some cases, yeah, they serve as an example for the group, right? They help the group through their example to exit or to show a different path, a different way for whatever it is that that group is fixed or stuck in, right? Whether it's a group that's related to alcohol, addictions, or art, or corruption in some way. Whatever the thing is that the group is fixed with. They give an example, and they don't submit to the level of that group. They're able to maintain themselves. The cosmoethical infiltration, if they're not able to, there would no longer be that cosmoethical infiltration. At the same time, I think in certain circumstances, they're able to position themselves in certain situations. They do show themselves, I think, but they have that moral authority because they are part of the group. I think that sometimes can happen as well.
I was thinking in terms of transmigration, and so the consciousness move to another planet, and they are evolving among less evolved consciousness. So what they develop, they need to present there. It's all what they're going to present there. So this could be a broken line indexation program for that consciousness. They will go lower, but what they already developed in their evolution, it's not lost. It's gonna be there, and they will have maybe that consciousness will develop with that group and help that group to develop themselves, and that's the cosmetic infiltration. Otherwise, the consciousness enter there, and they are in the interpretation of that group, and they become like the whole group. They manifest like everyone else.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the person that is infiltrated is always in the edge of the of the blade.
Yes.
Very, very thin line.
Very thin line.
Because the person cannot say everything that he or she thinks.
Yes.
Somehow he or she is limited in the expression, but of course. They're not actually adopting all the values and anti-cosmoethical values of that group.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a bond, there is a connection between them that makes them, part of the same group.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes difficult because sometimes you are infiltrated and you have to be low profile.
Yep.
At the same time, you have to do something important there. So being low profile and doing something great, something important, not exactly great, but something important. That's
showing the difference.
It's improve and get better the situation. And it depends on the situation you are. Sometimes the group doesn't like it. You are, moving them, you're changing the holocaust scene. Sometimes people don't like it, and you still have to be low profile somehow. Don't know how. But
it's striking that balance, right? It's like you understand where you can go and where you can't go, but always moving things forward. I think that's the point. It's
and I think it demands that para-diplomacy, for the consciousness. So yes, I need because there is the connection. What I think in terms of infiltrate, there is affectionate connection as well, and the consciousness needed to look at the movement of the group without corrupt themselves, but understand how the group manage the thing. It's not that that's why I said about the product diplomacy. It's not that the infiltrate going to arrive there and say, I have all the you have to do. No. I have all the funds, my involved, I will take you guys. No. I think the consciousness developing skills that the consciousness will enter into the group, but from a more subtle way, and then work multidimensionally, work with the energies, talk with one and another, but with the flow of the group, with the allowance of the group, not imposing things in the group. And I think it's quite a challenge to keep the cosmoethics, to keep the focus, and do not do imposition to the group, because I don't think the infiltrate will impose anything, but will help the people in the levels, not necessarily they have to be tomorrow extremely evolved, but within the necessity of that group to move on, in a sense. That's how I understand the movement of infiltrated.
sometimes the best thing that can be done is to just plant a seed, right?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Nothing else. It's just the presence of the person,
Yeah.
not to say anything, but that presence, some things that the person says, and it will reverberate in people. And that's what you said, it's the seed. And that's enough for the process ahead. And will depend. I think it depends on the group, it depends on the necessity, and depends on the situation.
And the individuals on the group, in the
And
group
the
as well.
individuals on the group and the connection that the infiltrate is in relation to that group. So there are many variables that is necessary to evaluate.
Yeah, and sometimes in the beginning of the work, beginning of what you're doing in that life, infiltrated. Sometimes it's harder in the beginning, and you learn how to deal with.
Yeah.
And on the end, everything's you got the flow. You
You got the
understood.
flow.
You
Yes.
you learned how to do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And
I don't know if we have time, but I would like to give an example. I
we
traveled
do have
once.
we do have.
Yeah, I traveled. I love traveling, and I decided to travel to the Pacific island. It's a place called Vanuatu, and it's a place where the pygmies were there. You know, they eat people,
Pygmies.
cannibals, cannibals.
Papua New
So
Guinea. In Papua New
no, it
Guinea.
was Vanuatu, near to
Vanuatu.
New Caledonia. Yes, a
All right.
Pacific island.
All right.
And I arrived there. I told this to Jaclyn. I was studying about woman because I was writing my verbatim. And I have a book about a woman and so on. And I arrived at the resort, and the girls in the resort, they will look at me and I say hello, and they will go far away from me. They wouldn't be very welcoming. And and after the second night I was there, I did penta every day, and was finishing penta. And when I after finishing penta, I received a visitors astrophysically, and it was the helper, but there were two indigenous main caciques, you know, and telepathically they asked me, "What are you doing here?" So I said, I'm on holiday. I came just to rest. But it wasn't very interesting because they said just that. And I said, yeah, just that. I'm just relaxing. So when I came out from my room, I went out and the girls start to come closer to me, the girls from the hotel. And they will ask, hello, how are you? And I found that very interesting. Later down the track, they told me that, first of all, they were surprised that a woman by herself was traveling alone first. And secondly, they start to tell me about domestic violence that happened there, all the woman condition in that place, and how they live there, how they were forced to have kids, and all these conditions that woman has in certain societies. And for me, it was a great learning because they check if I was there to impose something, and I wasn't. I just sat there and I read, and I didn't have any problem with them. But I think I felt like this. I was in the middle of their domain, and they check what you are doing here. I said nothing, and so I would listen the girls, but I wouldn't say anything. But for them was enough my presence there. Do you understand that? And it's more or less what we were talking about. I think they infiltrated. It's not necessary what you say, but the energy you pass and depend on the group and your presence, your energies, your history, and how you reflect on that group. You know.
All
It's
right.
an example of a different way of living, right? For them, it's can be very shocking and very disturbing in terms of their cultural setup.
Yes, but it brings an interrogation
Yeah.
mark. Even though they have the patrulhamento, I don't know, the policemen astrophysically to make sure that they do not think about that, you know.
Okay. There is. I'm gonna leave you guys with a question, and there's a quick ad I have to do from Consecutivos, and is that possible to someone in a upwards broken line think that it's a downwards, it's a downward broken line, or the reverse? Is that in a down broken line, and he thinks it's that he's in an upwards broken line. And what do you guys think? What do you guys think?
Can we answer?
You know what I mean? You have some time to think about it. I don't have this answer, and you guys will help me with that. You have to think about it. And I have a quick ad from Consecutivos. Think about, you have a minute. We have 2 courses on Consecutivos. One is Paraegyptology, the influence of Alexandria on the Western thought. It will happen on 2nd and 3rd of October. And the other course is Collecting and Serexological Self-Research. That will happen on 16th of October, and with Luciana Labor. She's the teacher. All right. Is to subscribe, just go to Consecutivos website, www.consecutivos.org. Okay. So let's come back for the guys. I'm anxious for the answers.
I hope I get a good score.
João Paulo, I think will depend. And basically what you said when you write about this, it depends how conscious the person is about it. Because maybe if they are semi-conscious or they are unconscious, they might think that they are up, but they are down, or they are down, they are up. They are not lucid. But the more lucid and aware the consciousness is, I think, yes, they will know that they are down, and they are up.
I think, for example, if the person recognizes what they've received in their life, they recognize the gains they've received, and sometimes the person just takes it for granted, and they don't realize that those things are, have helped them and have, been positive for, giving them a more favorable life. I think, it's related to what Anna was saying in terms of the level of awareness, right? Person may, and how they may, I don't know, complain about their life and not realize what they already have in their hands, right? Mm-hmm. And then I guess the opposite is true as well, right? Maybe the consciousness is, I don't know, maybe it's like a well adapted or more resilient, or has a greater level of autonomy, self-autonomy, and they're in whatever circumstances they're in, they're more able to deal with it, or they have a high level of determination. They make the most of their life, and so they're not aware that they're in a downward path, right? So
yeah, I think that it's like that the half full or half empty glass thing. If the person always looks at the empty part of the glass, probably is in an upwards broken line, and thinking that is in a downwards broken line. And on the other hand, if the person is usually, have this natural trend or inclination to look at the full part of the glass, probably can happen that this person is in a downwards broken line, but feeling and thinking that, well, it's everything nice, everything's going right, and I'm in an upwards broken line. I think it has to do with how the perception of the person is, and of course the lucidity and everything that you guys already mentioned.
But what you said, Viv, one thing I start to think at, regardless if it's a down or up, or the existential program need to be completist. And so regardless if one or the other, and I think that will help the full glass. No matter where I am, I need to fill all these glasses. So if I'm up or down, doesn't make difference. Obviously, if
You have to fill it up anyway.
you have
Yeah.
to fill up as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I know I'm a little naughty tonight, but what do you think happens more often? The down think is down, the up is think is down, or the down thinking up?
And again, I think that you mean going from down to up, and then up to down, or
No,
No,
or
no,
just having
what,
more
the
up?
yeah,
down.
what? Sometimes we have a lot of, you know, things that helps us. We have everything. We are in the upwards broken line, and we think it's always we don't have many things favorable for us. You know what I mean? So sometimes we might think we have less than we really think we really have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that the more um, common, I mean, not the more common, but in my point of view, it's the half empty,
Yeah.
approach. The person is in an upwards broken line, but feeling or thinking that is in a downwards broken line, or not having enough resources, enough time, enough strong traits, enough anything to develop and to express him or herself. And that's thinking, especially in Brazil, I think that people would have this natural inclination to see the empty part of the glass, not the full part of the glass.
I agree with Weber. I think it's more common, it's the down. Due to many factors, and I think mesology is one of them, very strong when the consciousness can't become more aware of things. But yes, the tendency to think I do need more to do something else. And never I have enough to do what I need to do right now. So yeah, I just need more and more and more. But yeah, I think this makes the person think, yeah, I'm down there. But in reality, I do have all the things I need to do to execute extension program. I think not many of us think that. Yeah, so I do agree with Fabio. It's usually less.
Maybe one of the key words for these problems in the broken lines is adaptation. I think as more adapted we are, better we deal with these broken lines. Don't you think?
I agree. I
I agree.
think, it really depends on, and this is all about experiences as well. The more experiences the consciousness has in diverse circumstance situations, the more that they develop this level of adaptation, right? I think, to have this balance of experiences and not get too attached to, one type of how could I say, set of experiences or another set is very important. But I think, this adaptation, and it makes me think of, how could I say, how universalistic are we? Asking that question. Like, are we able to, whatever, for example, whatever country we're born into, are we able to, adapt well to the circumstances? In terms of our body, in terms of the diversity of different experiences, different consciousnesses, that's the path.
Yeah,
I would
and
go a little.
when we move to another country in the
Yes,
same
that's
life,
it.
that
I
happened
would go further.
with to
Yeah.
you, yeah,
Yes. Yes.
Anna and Jaclyn.
Yeah. Yeah. I would go further a little bit. What Jaclyn said is not where you were born, but also the places where you choose to live and to choose as your place for that moment. How you adapt? Are you fighting with the mesology? And I think adaptability it's equal flexibility. So adaptable means that you play like you understand what are the things that the variables that are here, uh, the mesology, what the influences, how people feel, manifest their affection or not, how you start to see that there are different ways that people live their lives, and not because they are different, they are less or more, but you adapt to that. You're not picky, you're not clicky. You just don't want that place to be your place. You don't want that your ego to influence the place you are. You don't want to change that. For the opposite, you go there and you mingle. And I think this will help to look and to take advantage of those broken lines, because regardless what it is, you adapt. That's what is for the day, this, and so go there and do it, you know.
And I
But
think, yeah.
it needs not only adaptability but detachment. Detach from our own big absolute truth about things and how things should do, the control of things, you know. The word should be like Brazilian. The feijão in Brazil is the best. It's not like Mexico. Mexico is not good. It's frijoles, it's feijão, but no, not like Brazil. And so all these little things shows how we are not adaptable, even our taste. Imagine the rest. You know, so
Yeah.
just
And
my contribution.
No, and I agree with you, Anna. And I think, how can I say, you can seek experiences which will help you to, go out of your comfort zone. I think this is the point. We have our comfort zone, and it's much easier to live within it. But if we seek experiences that will push our boundaries, that will, in this life, even though we're in that positive line, maybe. But we still we utilize this life. We use this life to have those experiences which will push us even that much further.
And to understand what is surrounding us. Like nowadays, I like neuroscience, and I start to study about colors and so on. And I discovered one person doesn't perceive red as the other person. So even in perception of colors, we are all so different. What else we are different? So many things. And so because this restriction is dimension, we think that we all are equal, equal in a sense. We all do think the same things. We all do the same things. And when we think that, it's quite difficult to adapt, to see that there are variables and differences between us. And that's what enrich us. As Jaclyn said, we should go to open the eyes and they see the universe around us. And that's how we make easier for us to adapt as a man or a woman, as a yellow person or Chinese or Japanese or Russian or, any nationality, because that's important for our broken line as well. So that's it.
Yeah, it's part of the evolutionary process to somehow control our ego, or get rid of our ego. Of course, it's impossible, but actually value the opportunity, the evolutionary opportunity, and the group we are in. Not, as you said, Anna, instead of adapting to the environment, we try to transform the environment and adapt it to ourselves. So it's very egocentric, approach to deal with, and to for the environments that we get in touch with. And I think that we have, of course, when we try to express ourselves, inevitably we change, or we can promote some changes in the environment, but the idea is, let's have this inter-assistential process to take advantage of this, not trying to force the environment to adapt to ourselves, to our needs, or whatever.
And adaptation is one thing that can make us deal with all the problems and the conditions of that life. But one step further, can we revert? Can we make a downward become upward in a single life? Is this possible? I think we never know.
Anything is possible for the consciousness.
Anything is possible.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yes, yeah.
And
we have.
There are the probabilities, right? The probabilities may be very, very low to achieve that, but it's possible. I think it's possible.
We have moratorium Nowadays, we have longevity nowadays, so people can live 50, 100 years. They say that the person going to live 120 already were born, so why not? But it will depend, not the time intraphysically, but how the person will dedicate their lives intraphysically. We don't know. It depends on the consciousness. No, we do not have a moratorium that the consciousness has the opportunity to carry on the existential program. So why the consciousness can't revert that and regain a level of lucidity in one life and go step up. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, for example, if the person is able to put as a priority their evolution, right, in a lucid way, understand their current circumstances, but, you know, they're able to overcome those limitations in some way. You know, we see examples of that happening. People who've gone, I don't know, experienced strong traumas, and you know it's affected them, and they spend their life, you know, like I'm thinking of that lady Edith Eger. I think she experienced the Holocaust, and she just wrote a book that's come out, and she went through, you know, unbelievable trauma, and yet she spent her life going through the process, helping herself and helping others, becoming a psychologist, and then, you know, now she's helping people on a much larger scale. I think for me, she's an example of someone who, you know, went up from a downward.
Yeah.
I think the consciousness is the problem. The consciousness is the solution as well. And so if the consciousness comes with some limitation, and the consciousness decide that I'm going to overcome that, who else going to say otherwise? You know, so I think, yes.
And very interesting, this point of view. I agree with you, Ana. We have the problems and the solutions are within ourselves.
Yes, yes, yes.
And when we are on the 30s and 40s, how can we evaluate, or how can I say, how can you assess if we are doing good in our broken line? You know what I mean? We already have, you know, we lived some years already, and we have more decades ahead. How can we, you know, evaluate if we're doing good enough, or we have to, you know, change ways, you know, correct directions in a broken line?
That, yeah, I would say in a general way, not in terms only of a broken line, because I actually not sure if I am in a broken line. You know, but in a general way, I think that one thing that helped me, or actually is a technique that I use when I want to assess, you know, the level of completeness, you know, is an idea that Professor Valdo Vieira brought in the manual, the Praxis manual, the existential program manual. The idea is to think or imagine the soma in a 1 year ahead, and I bring a little bit closer to this the soma moment, and I think, well, if I, you know, have a heart attack this very moment and, you know, switch off this body, how am I going to feel about my performance up to today, up to now? If I feel okay, it's you know, it's fine. But when we think of the idea of losing the opportunities or finishing the opportunity of this life at this moment, we think of the things that we have left behind, and we didn't want to leave behind. So I think it's a technique. I like to think of this way to assess how well I'm doing in this you know, this existential program.
Yeah, I do more or less like Weber, and I look and I see the things that, yes, if I die today, what are the things that I haven't done? And I do not like to have things that I haven't done. I'm in debt with myself because I studied and I don't honor my university or the investment I did in that. I am in debt with myself when I do not publish the things I needed to publish. So I'm in debt with myself. So when I'm still fighting with some people that I shouldn't be. So I need to improve myself to improve that relationship. So these things are the most important thing, because if I die tomorrow, like Bebe said, I will be fine with this. I will be satisfied with myself, or I will have to come back, and or I will regret things. And I think this is one important thing. And another thing that I use is the reference for communicability, the three dotation, no? Communicability, parapsychism, and intellectuality. Many years ago, we talked about this invasion, the things that you need to invest and so on. And I had a list of things, intellectuality, parapsychism, and this. So, and sometimes I check, am I in this? Wow, you are behind in this. You need to improve that. You haven't done that. You haven't done that. And I still have 50 years. So can I do that within that period? So it's just evaluate, having measurement now for yourself, the things that are important that you need to execute, and do it. We do have time. If we have one day, we still can do.
Okay. So we have a few minutes more, and I would like to finish with one question to every one of you. Say, what do you think? How can we prepare ourselves for the next, broken line? So we're gonna be, more prepared. We probably will have, bigger challenges ahead. How can we prepare ourselves for the next, level, next life, or the next challenges?
I think we should do our best in this life. Our best for the best for this life. And from there, when it comes the other one, we think about it. But I think prepare for another one is being in the present, here and now, multidimensionally speaking, and doing our best, the best we can do right now. The rest, we see when we are there, down the track.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to really, as Anna said, I think we need to focus just on this life in doing, the best, and to, how could I say, work, like to drop our expectations as well, not to hold, we have a certain set of circumstances, and I think it's important for us to just, how could I say, to enjoy it while it's happening, but not to hold on to it so tightly that, if we do go into that downward descent, we're not going to be missing it and wanting it. And, so I think to accept the current situation as it is, and, not with any strong attachments.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the only thing I can add is that I agree. Because I think that it's a challenge for us to live in the present, to live in this very moment. We are always thinking of the future or thinking of the past. And of course, that we have to exercise. I mean, I myself, in my mind, I think that I need to exercise, where I'm going to be in the next few years, or in the next life, or what are the next steps. I think that it's a nice thing to do, is to think of, because otherwise I would just live this life as a normal regular scene. I wouldn't think of Proexis and nothing else. But at the same time, I agree with you guys, and we have to do our best in this very moment with the tools and the opportunities that we have in this very moment. If we learn how to take advantage of all these things, we probably in the next situation, a future situation, we're going to be able to take advantage of the tools and the opportunities and the
Yeah.
resources that we have in that situation.
But when you talk like this, I remember the expression that Professor Valdi used to say, no, you have your feet on the ground and your mental body on the cosmos. So that's, I think, it is being the present. Now, I have my feet in here. I needed to draw in this life, but I have my focus, that's my existential program, and where I am right now is probably where I should be. And you said about the present and future. And sometimes there is a place where sometimes we stay that it could be, like things should, things could. And no, things are. That's it. Who could or ever work now to create that. And I think that's another, I don't know if it's a past, present, but in this realm of thinking where could, should, and nothing happening now because we are not where we are. It's like that. I don't know, Jaclyn, could be future, could or should, or it's just imagination, the ideal world,
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
But I think also, like, how could I say, looking at yourself, what is the most important thing that you need to recycle in this life so that, you know what I mean, it's not going to cause a problem in the next life, I think, and you're going to deal better with the next life. So I think this process of recycling, looking at those things which could hold you back, right, I think is important.
All right. So I think this is our time. And I thank you so much for this evening. That was very interesting. I learned a lot. I enjoy a lot to be with you guys. And I thank you, Ana Paula. I thank you, Jaclyn and Weber, for this meeting. And we invite everyone else who's watching us for the next, meeting. And every Wednesday there are a new video from Mnemo channel. So thank you so much, and see you next time. And this is a wrap. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.